For over 50 years, grabbing your favorite seat on Southwest meant comfort, routine, and freedom, especially if you knew how the system worked. But in 2026, everything changes. Assigned seats, new boarding rules, and for many travelers aged 50 and up, higher fees for extra legroom or even sitting with a partner. Is this the end of stress-free flying or just the start of a fight over where you sit? To understand how the 2026 airline seat rule could upend decades of travel habits, first you have to see what's at stake if you lose that choice. When Southwest Airlines launched in 1971, it introduced a boarding ritual unlike anything else in the industry. Instead of assigning seats, the airline handed passengers a boarding pass and let them choose any available spot on the plane. For many, this was more than a quirky policy. It became a familiar comfort, especially for older travelers who valued routine and a sense of control. Over the decades, the process of lining up in A, B, or C groups, scanning for open rows, and settling into a favorite window or aisle seat turned into a cherished part of the flying experience. Couples found ways to secure seats together without paying extra, while solo travelers, especially those with mobility challenges, learned to time their arrival or request pre-boarding to claim seats near the front or close to the bathroom. This flexibility offered real benefits. Passengers could adjust their plans at the last minute, swap seats to stay close to a friend, or move for comfort without worrying about extra fees or complicated rules. If a flight was only half full, regulars knew how to spot empty rows for a little extra space. For those flying several times a year, especially after retirement, these small freedoms made travel less stressful and more predictable. While most major airlines shifted to assigned seating and began charging for preferred spots, Southwest held on to its open seating tradition. By 2025, it stood alone among U.S. carriers, a holdout against the growing trend of monetizing every aspect of the passenger experience. This resistance was not just about nostalgia. It reflected a practical understanding of what frequent older travelers valued most: autonomy, routine, and the ability to make the journey their own. Stories from airports across the country echoed the same sentiment. Travelers described the satisfaction of knowing the system, the camaraderie of the boarding line, and the relief of avoiding last-minute seat shuffles or hidden fees. For many, the open seating model was a rare pocket of simplicity in an industry that seemed to grow more complicated every year. As airlines around the world tightened their policies and expanded seat selection fees, Southwest's approach stood out as a quiet rebellion, a model built on trust, speed, and the belief that passengers could manage their own comfort. The ritual of choosing a seat was woven into the fabric of travel for millions, shaping habits, friendships, and even the way families plan their trips. In 2026, that ritual will fade into memory, but its impact on generations of travelers remains unmistakable. Every traveler carries a set of rituals, but for some, those habits are the very heart of the journey. For Bob and Linda, both retired teachers from Tulsa, the Southwest boarding process was a quiet comfort they counted on. For years, they booked flights to visit grandchildren in Phoenix, always checking in exactly 24 hours before departure to secure an early boarding group. The routine never changed. Bob would carry the rolling bag, Linda would keep an eye on the gate clock, and together they'd scan the line for familiar faces, other regulars who knew the drill. The moment they stepped onto the plane, they moved in sync, heading to their favorite row just behind the wing. Bob took the aisle for his long legs, Linda the window for her crossword puzzles in the sunlight. No extra fees, no awkward negotiations with strangers, just the quiet satisfaction of a plan well executed. These small patterns, lining up, sharing a smile with another couple, choosing the same seats every time, brought a sense of predictability to travel. For Bob, who sometimes felt anxious in crowds, knowing he could find a seat close to the exit eased his mind. Linda liked the freedom to swap seats if a nearby child needed to sit with a parent, or to move closer to the front on days when her arthritis flared. Over time, their routine turned flying into something almost familiar. a set of steps as comforting as packing a favorite sweater or brewing morning coffee. Many travelers in their 50s, 60s, and beyond have stories like this, rituals that soften the edges of an unpredictable world. Open seating wasn't just about where to sit, it was about feeling in control, even as airports and airplanes changed around them. Routine became a shield against the stress of travel. No last-minute seat assignments, no surprise fees, no worrying about being separated from a spouse or friend. For those on a fixed income, it meant budgeting without guesswork. For those with health concerns, it meant planning for comfort without extra phone calls or paperwork. Losing these rituals is more than a simple inconvenience. It touches something deeper, the sense of ease that comes from knowing how things work, and the quiet pride in mastering a system. For Bob and Linda and countless others, the end of open seating means saying goodbye to a piece of their travel identity. The familiar dance at the gate, the unspoken bonds with fellow regulars, and the small victories of snagging the perfect seat will soon live only in memory. As the boarding process becomes another transaction, the emotional fabric of travel for a generation of flyers begins to unravel, leaving many to wonder what, if anything, will take its place. January 27, 2026 will bring a new rhythm to Southwest Airlines' boarding process. On that day, open seating gives way to assigned seats, and a familiar ritual disappears. The first sign of the change comes months earlier. Beginning July 29, 2025, customers booking flights for travel after the transition date will see a seat map instead of a boarding group letter. Each reservation now locks in a specific spot on the plane, chosen at purchase or assigned automatically, depending on fare type and loyalty status. The boarding order itself is being rebuilt from the ground up. Southwest's decades-old A, B, and C groupings are being retired, replaced by a new 8-group system. Passengers will board in numbered groups, with priority determined by fare bundle, elite status, and seat location. Rapid Rewards elites and those purchasing Choice Extra or Choice Preferred fares will join groups 1 and 2, boarding first to claim extra leg room or front of cabin seats. The remaining groups 3 through 8 are sequenced by seat assignment and a method known as WILMA, window, middle, aisle. This approach is designed to reduce bottlenecks, letting those in window seats enter first, followed by middle and aisle, aiming for a smoother flow down the aisle and less overhead bin congestion. Behind the scenes, Southwest has been retrofitting its fleet to support these changes. By late 2025, about 200 aircraft feature newly designated premium sections, with extra legroom and clearer signage. On board, seat numbers are now visible on headrests and armrests. At the airport, new digital signage and floor markings direct travelers to their assigned boarding lanes. The Southwest app and website display updated seat maps, group numbers, and boarding instructions, helping travelers prepare before they reach the gate. Gate agents and flight crews have undergone updated training to handle the transition. They now use digital tools to manage last-minute seat swaps, family consolidations, and standby requests. For travelers with accessibility needs or who require extra space, new policies require advanced selection and documentation with seat-reserved stickers marking those accommodations as needed. The first weeks of assigned seating will bring adjustments. Early pilot flights show that premium cabins board faster, but overall boarding times can be longer if passengers miss their group or are unfamiliar with the new system. Frequent reminders via app notifications, email, and gate announcements aim to keep everyone on track. As the January deadline approaches, Southwest's operational focus is on clarity and consistency, ensuring that the leap from open seating to assigned places is as smooth as possible for every traveler. Inside Southwest's operations centers and maintenance hangars, the move to assigned seating has triggered a wave of behind-the-scenes changes. Since mid-2025, technicians have worked through the night at airports from Dallas to Denver, retrofitting nearly 200 aircraft with new seat labeling, premium sections, and extra legroom rows. Headrests and armrests now display bold seat numbers, while cabin signage guides travelers to their assigned spots. These physical upgrades are paired with digital overhauls. The Southwest app and website feature interactive seat maps, group numbers, and updated boarding instructions, all designed to reduce confusion before travelers even reach the airport. At the gates, the transformation is just as visible. Digital signs and color-coded floor markings now direct passengers to one of 8 boarding lanes, each tied to a specific group and seat assignment. New lane stickers and overhead monitors display both the group number and the Wilma sequence, window, middle, aisle, helping passengers understand when to board and where to queue. This reconfiguration extends to the airport's back rooms, where supervisors monitor crowd flow and adjust staffing to keep lines moving smoothly. Gate agents and flight crews have spent months in training sessions, learning the ins and outs of the new system. They practice using digital seat release tools to handle last-minute changes, such as family consolidations or standby requests. Training modules walk them through scenarios: a traveler needing an adjacent seat for medical reasons, a late-arriving customer who missed their group, or a family split across the cabin by a last-minute schedule change. Agents now rely on handheld devices and updated gate portals to manage these challenges, with contingency plans ready for everything from system glitches to unexpected weather delays. Pilot flights on retrofitted aircraft have produced a steady stream of data. Early results show that boarding is faster for those in the premium seats at the front, but overall times can stretch if passengers miss their group or struggle with the Wilma sequence. Overhead bins fill in a more orderly way up front, but staff still monitor for congestion further back. As the rollout continues, feedback from these test runs shapes ongoing staff briefings and IT updates, smoothing out the bumps before the full transition in January 2026. Communication with travelers has become a daily priority. Automated app notifications, emails, and gate announcements explain the new process at every step, while on-site supervisors provide extra support during peak travel times. For those with accessibility needs or requiring extra space, advanced selection and documentation are now part of the routine. Seat-reserved stickers mark these accommodations, signaling to crew and other passengers that special arrangements are in place. Across the system, every detail, from the layout of the boarding lanes to the scripts used by agents, reflects months of preparation, all aimed at making the shift to assigned seating as seamless as possible. Southwest's decision to end open seating isn't just a matter of changing tradition. It's a calculated move with billions of dollars on the line. Industry analysts have watched as airlines worldwide turned seat selection into a profit engine. With assigned seating, Southwest unlocks a new set of revenue streams that were previously out of reach. The company projects an additional $1 billion in earnings before interest and taxes in 2026, driven largely by fees for preferred seats, extra legroom, and bundled fare upgrades. For decades, Southwest's open seating model set it apart, but financial pressures and shareholder expectations have closed that gap. Now, every seat is a potential upsell. On a short route like Los Angeles to San Francisco, a reserved seat can cost anywhere from $10 to $25 on top of the base fare. For longer flights, say Dallas to Orlando, an extra legroom seat might add $25 to $75 per segment. These new charges stack up quickly, especially for those who travel several times a year. The airline's new pricing engine dynamically adjusts seat fees based on demand, route, and booking window. Early bookings might secure a preferred seat for $20, but last-minute travelers could pay $50 or more for the same spot. Analysts point to EasyJet's 2012 switch to paid seat assignments as a template. Initial customer resistance, followed by steady growth in ancillary revenue. Southwest's leadership is betting that most passengers will pay for certainty and comfort, especially on busy routes or during peak travel seasons. Andrew Watterson, Southwest's Chief Operating Officer, describes the shift as a response to customer behavior. We see literally a knife edge on January 27th in our bookings. Customers are voting with their wallet as well as the surveys that they like fine seating, extra legroom. The company's internal reports show that when seat fees are kept below $24 per leg, about 70% of travelers opt in. Once prices rise above $37, that number drops to 40%. The sweet spot, according to analysts, is just high enough to boost revenue without driving passengers to competitors. Seat selection isn't the only new fee on the table. Priority boarding, previously an optional luxury, now carries a premium price tag, often $39 to $49 per flight. For those seeking extra space, such as solo travelers or those needing an adjacent seat for comfort, the cost can reach $110 to $160 on longer routes. These add-ons transform what was once a single ticket price into a menu of choices, each with its own cost. The impact is clearest for travelers on fixed incomes. For a retired couple making a dozen round trips a year, annual travel expenses can rise by 26% to 83% compared to 2024, depending on how many extras they select. Some will adjust by booking earlier, choosing basic seats, or skipping premium options. But many will see the total climb well past $2,000 a year. For Southwest, the math is simple. Assigned seating and premium options mean higher per-passenger revenue, more predictable earnings, and a new way to compete with legacy carriers. But for customers, every choice now comes with a price tag, and the familiar comfort of routine has become a line item on the balance sheet. A round-trip flight that once cost $300 can now climb to $390 or more, even before adding checked bags or early boarding. For travelers on a fixed income, this is not a minor inconvenience. It's a sharp new reality. Base fares nudge up by 6 to 10%, but the real surprise comes with seat selection. Choosing a window or aisle seat now runs $20 to $50 each way depending on the route and travel date. Extra legroom, once a luxury for the lucky or early, now carries a premium of $40 to $75 per segment. Priority boarding, a lifeline for those who struggle with overhead bins or tight connections, is priced at $39 to $49 per flight. The math adds up quickly. A retired couple flying 12 times a year could see annual travel costs rise from $1,620 to as much as $2,970 if they opt for preferred seats and priority boarding, a jump of 26 to 83% compared to 2024. Even part-time leisure travelers taking 6 trips a year face increases of 36 to 76%, depending on how many extras they select. For many, the new costs push annual spending above $2,000, a threshold that experts say prompts 1 in 3 to cut back on trips or look for alternatives. Travelers are already adapting. About 40 to 60% now book earlier to lock in lower seat fees, hoping to avoid the last-minute surges that drive prices above $37 per leg. When fees stay under $24, nearly 70% of passengers opt in for seat selection. Once prices rise above $37, that number drops to 40%. The sweet spot is narrow, and the penalties for waiting are steep. Peak holiday flights or last-minute bookings can push seat fees past $50, with priority boarding and baggage charges stacking on top. For those without elite status or loyalty perks, the impact is even greater. Non-member frequent flyers, often older adults visiting family or managing health needs, see their annual costs rise by 25 to 72%. Many now skip extras, accept middle seats, or switch to airlines offering bundled fares. Some report eliminating 1 or 2 trips per year, while others shift travel to off-peak times or choose ground transportation instead. Elasticity studies reveal that travel frequency is sensitive to total out-of-pocket expense. Once annual costs approach $2,400 for fixed-income households, about 35 to 45% reduce their flying. The behavioral ripple is clear: fewer trips, earlier bookings, and a growing reliance on loyalty programs that still offer some seat choice without added fees. For every traveler who adapts, there are others who feel boxed in by the new rules. The familiar freedom of choosing a seat at the gate has been replaced by a menu of fees, each one a small but significant barrier. As the industry moves toward ever more granular pricing, the personal impact for those age 50 and older is not just about comfort or convenience. It's about whether the journey itself remains within reach. For travelers who need more space or special seating, the new rules introduce a host of new requirements and anxieties. Airlines across the U.S., including Southwest, now require anyone who needs an extra seat for comfort or mobility to book it in advance, often weeks before departure. The days of quietly asking a gate agent or hoping for an empty row are over. Instead, passengers must declare their needs up front, purchase the additional seat, and keep careful records to request a refund after the trip. The refund window is set at 90 days, but the process can feel impersonal and bureaucratic, especially for those not comfortable with online forms or mobile apps. The cost for this extra space is not trivial. On domestic routes, fees for an adjacent seat now run between $50 and $150, depending on the length of the flight. For someone traveling several times a year, this adds up quickly, especially for older adults on fixed incomes or those with ongoing health needs. The policy is designed to guarantee space and avoid last-minute disputes at the gate, but it shifts the burden squarely onto the traveler. If a flight is full and no extra seat is available, the airline will rebook the passenger. But that can mean missed events, extra nights in hotels, or the stress of rearranging plans at the last minute. Advocates for plus-size and disabled travelers argue that these new hurdles are more than a matter of comfort. They are about dignity and equal access. Groups like the National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance and the National Disability Rights Network have pressed airlines and federal regulators to create clearer, fairer rules. Their message is simple: no one should have to fight for the right to travel comfortably or be penalized for needs beyond their control. Lawsuits and complaints to the Department of Transportation have led to some improvements, such as mandatory advance notice and clearer refund timelines. But comprehensive federal regulation has yet to materialize. For now, every airline sets its own rules, and travelers must navigate a patchwork of policies that can change with little warning. The experience of arranging extra space now begins long before reaching the airport. Travelers must gather documentation, read through fine print, and often spend hours on hold or navigating airline websites to secure the right seat. The process is stressful, and mistakes can be costly. If a refund claim is not submitted within the 90-day window, the money is lost. If the need for extra space arises unexpectedly due to a health flare-up or injury, last-minute solutions may be expensive or unavailable. For those who have spent years mastering the old routines, this new system feels like a step backward, replacing flexibility and trust with paperwork and uncertainty. Advocates continue to call for reform, urging the Department of Transportation to step in with clear standards, fee caps, and consistent procedures across carriers. Until then, the responsibility falls on individual travelers to plan ahead, document their needs, and hope that the system works as promised. For many, the greatest cost is not measured in dollars, but in the loss of autonomy and the quiet dignity that once defined their journeys. Advocacy groups have not stood by quietly as airlines tighten their grip on seat selection and special accommodation policies. The National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance, known as NAAFA, and the National Disability Rights Network have spent years pressing for fairer treatment of plus-size and disabled travelers. Their campaigns have filled comment sections on Department of Transportation dockets, delivered thousands of petition signatures, and drawn attention to the stories of passengers who faced last-minute denials or surprise fees at the airport. For many, the fight is not just about comfort. It's about the right to travel with dignity and without extra financial burden for needs beyond their control. The Department of Transportation has begun to respond. In late 2025, the agency opened a formal review of seat selection fees, focusing on transparency and fairness for travelers who require extra space or special seating. Proposed rules would require airlines to clearly disclose all seat-related fees up front and to waive extra charges for passengers with documented medical or mobility needs. Several lawmakers, including Senator Richard Blumenthal, have introduced bills to cap seat selection and accommodation fees, aiming to prevent airlines from turning basic access into a profit center. While no federal law currently limits these charges, the momentum for regulation is building. Legal complaints and class action lawsuits continue to pile up. Since 2018, several high-profile cases have forced airlines to refund fees to passengers who were denied pre-booked accessible seats or faced unclear refund rules. Settlements have required clearer notice and documentation procedures, but the lack of a national standard means travelers must still navigate a patchwork of policies that can change without warning. Advocacy groups argue that only federal action will ensure consistent, predictable treatment for all. Petitions and public comment campaigns have put pressure on both airlines and regulators. In 2025, a joint petition from NAAFA and the National Disability Rights Network gathered over 60,000 signatures, calling for a nationwide cap on plus-size and special needs seat fees. The Department of Transportation, in response, announced it was studying whether to set maximum allowable charges and require that all airlines offer a straightforward, timely refund process for those who qualify. Consumer rights organizations have joined the push, urging regulators to enforce the Americans with Disabilities Act in airline seating and to hold carriers accountable for failures in accommodation. For travelers, these efforts offer a measure of hope. The possibility of capped fees, clearer rules, and consistent accommodations would mean fewer surprises and less anxiety when planning a trip. Advocacy groups encourage travelers to document every interaction, keep receipts, and file complaints with the Department of Transportation if they encounter unfair charges or denied accommodations. With enough voices, the system can be pushed toward greater fairness. The fight is ongoing, but each petition, lawsuit, and regulatory review brings the industry a step closer to making air travel accessible and affordable for everyone. Booking a flight in 2026 means navigating a maze of seat assignments, fees, and shifting policies. For travelers over 50, a few practical steps can keep the experience manageable. Begin by checking the airline's current seating policy before every purchase. Airlines revise their rules often, so bookmark the policy page or print it out. Details on seat selection fees, refund terms, and accommodation deadlines are rarely static. Treat each trip as a new scenario. What worked last time may not apply today. Loyalty programs have become more than just a points game. Enroll in rapid rewards or similar schemes, even for occasional trips. These memberships often include early boarding, free or discounted seat assignments, and bundled perks that can offset rising costs. Always link your membership number to reservations. If you use an airline credit card, check for automatic seat benefits before paying extra. Sometimes bundled fare classes include seat selection or priority boarding at a lower total cost than piecemeal add-ons. Early booking is now essential. As flights fill, seat fees climb and the best spots, aisle, window, extra legroom, vanish quickly. Aim to reserve tickets at least 30 to 45 days ahead. If you need a specific seat for health or mobility, request it as soon as your travel dates are set. For those requiring an extra seat, gather documentation from your doctor and follow the airline's process for advance submission. Save all correspondence and receipts. If a refund is promised, note the deadline to file, usually within 90 days of travel. When comparing fares, look beyond the base price. Add up seat and bag fees to see the real cost. Some fare types still bundle seat selection or priority boarding, which can be more economical. If traveling with others, coordinate bookings to select seats together, avoiding last-minute changes at the gate. For accessibility needs, call customer service after booking to confirm arrangements and request written confirmation. On the day of travel, arrive earlier than before. New boarding groups and lane assignments can be confusing, especially during peak times. Double-check your boarding group and seat assignment on the airline app or printed pass. Listen for group announcements and be ready to line up. If there's a missing seat assignment or a split booking, alert a gate agent immediately. Digital tools now allow for last-minute fixes, but early notice helps. Keep records of every fee, seat assignment, and staff interaction. If unfair charges or denied accommodations occur, file a complaint with the Department of Transportation or a consumer advocacy group. With careful preparation, familiar routines and comfort remain within reach even as air travel evolves. In January 2026, Southwest Airlines will end its 55-year tradition of open seating, replacing it with assigned seats and an 8-group boarding system. For many travelers aged 50 and over, this marks the loss of familiar routines and the start of new costs. Data presented here shows seat selection fees rising 30 to 70% on popular routes. The documentary has shown how this change fits into a global trend. Airlines increasingly monetize comfort and choice, with policies for plus-size and disabled travelers requiring advance purchases and additional fees. Advocacy groups and the Department of Transportation are still weighing possible fee caps, but no federal regulations have been finalized. What remains unclear is whether these changes will deliver promised improvements in boarding or create new barriers for those with special needs. As airlines adapt and travelers adjust, one fact is certain. The way Americans choose their seats and what it costs will be fundamentally different after 2026.